So you answered my what would have been my next question, which is China's strategy. So let's jump now to probably the biggest issue that's emerged since the new administration took office in the U.S., which is a unilateral declaration, effectively, of economic conflict, if not warfare, against so much of the world at one time. I do think even for those who knew the administration was serious about trying to rebalance global trade, very few, I think, thought the US would take this kind of approach. There was an assumption that they would really zone in on China, build an alliance of countries to try and change the behaviors there. Instead, while they did single out China, they have been engaged in an economic back and forth with virtually every country in the world. I'm not asking you to analyze it from the economic perspective, but from a geopolitical perspective, how do you think that this policy is going to play out for the United States, given that it's not just focused on China? Now we're talking about an entire global trade discussion.
Now, here's the thing. None of that makes any sense from any perspective, whether economic, geopolitical, political, or anything else. If you look at it, as a strategy to assert any sort of interest. But if you're looking at it as a quick way to make money on market volatility, it makes perfect sense and has already achieved its goal. We have seen markets lose trillions of dollars in just the first weeks of this liberation day policy, and that money went somewhere, and that money went to speculators and people who had insider knowledge of this volatility. And every time the market goes up or goes down in response to this seemingly meaningless rebalancing and arbitrary policies regarding random countries, somebody is making money off of that. So if you want to be what if there isn't necessarily a long-term geopolitical goal to be effective, or to build any sort of factory infrastructure in the US, but what if the goal is simply to exploit these spaces and opportunities that arise as a result of uh, disbalance and confusion. In that case, it makes complete sense and has worked out pretty well because there has been a lot of confusion. I'm sure you've heard reports of good allies like Japan not being able to get a clear response on what it would take to remove the tariffs altogether, or what kind of deal US is looking for with countries like Israel, which is in the middle of a war, which is considered a close ally, and which does not have this negative trade balance that Trump is so concerned about. The policy also makes no sense, especially given that there's been weeks of behind the scenes of negotiations. Israel has removed all of its tariffs against the US, and it's not clear what the administration wants to get regard. So, given that there's no clear articulated objective in these bilateral negotiations or multilateral frameworks, including isolating China, the only conclusion a reasonable person could go to is that the trade war is not at all about geopolitics or asserting US primacy or returning manufacturing or rebuilding essential industries in the US. It's not even about the so called economic nationalism and protection of the US industries. It's only about some actors involved in this policy being able to exploit these tensions in their own private favor.